Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this fun little session that I like to call Hacking the Mind. Pretty well one of the easiest ways to break into an organization. I'm real excited to be here presenting to all of you, and hopefully for the next 3 hours and 400 slides, we'll be able to provide you some informative information and not scare you too much. No, in all actuality, it's only about 50 slides in 25 minutes. So let's go. You may have seen this show, you may not have, but it's one of my personal favorites, the TV show Mr. Robot. When he talks about social engineering, because that's what we're talking about as one of the easiest ways to hack into an organization, is through some type of social engineering. I've never found it hard to hack most people. If you listen to them, watch them, their vulnerabilities are like a neon sign screwed into their heads. So essentially watching people, looking for information about people, social media, LinkedIn, a lot of that is where a lot of these social engineer, cyber criminal groups get their information to do their kind of attack. So think about that as we go through stuff this afternoon. Really quick, my name is James McQuiggan. I am a security awareness advocate for KnowBe4, where we do security awareness training and pen testing. Sorry, not pen testing, phishing assessments, based out of Tampa. And you can find us more info about us at KnowBe4. But because of the time frame that we've got today, the information I want to go through, I want to make sure I get to it and share with you. I'm going to talk about social engineering and how that leads into phishing, which is what phishing really is a type of social engineering. Then we're going to talk about security awareness and then wrapping up with hopefully some time for Q&A. If not, I'll have my email address and you can email me there. So attackers, like anybody else, go for low-hanging fruit. And in this case, it's the human beings. So, but one thing that people will always say is, humans, they're the weakest link. The employees, they're always clicking on stuff. They're the reason we get hacked. For me, the reason humans are the weakest link is because they haven't been trained. And when I hear security people say they're the weakest link, I'm like, well, then you haven't trained them. People are a critical layer within your security programs that you have. If you educate them, you make them aware, you make them care, then they're going to be able to understand and be able to help secure your organization and be a strong asset, not a weakest link. But let's look at the human being. Let's look at people in general. So we always say, okay, humans are the weakest link, but why is that? You know, I mentioned security awareness, but let's have a look at the root of the issue, where our brains as people, their job is to filter, interpret, and present a certain kind of reality to you based on culture, based on norms, and so forth. But if I show up this picture where you see two people walking out of the ocean and you're looking at it, your initial response is, are they wearing any clothes? They look like they're not wearing any. But in actuality, they are. It's just that the image was covered up by certain colors and open dots in certain spaces. We see more skin and get our brains think, oh my gosh, they're not wearing any clothing. But in fact, that they are, because that area was covered up. Here's another perception versus reality. I assure you, you can read this, The Phenomenal Power of the Human Mind. According to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be in the right place. And also, I think it's got to do with word length as well. But your brain has the ability to read that because it can pick that up, because it recognizes the words, because that essentially we read the first letter, last letter, automatically picks up and goes on from there. Essentially, your brain was on autopilot as you read that. You didn't have to do a lot of thinking towards that. But that autopilot feature is what we call system one thinking, or what Daniel Kahneman, who is a Nobel Prize winning economical behaviorist, essentially, he did a huge study and research into why people buy things based off of market research, you know, the splurge shopping, the impulse shopping, those kind of things. But we also can apply it to cybersecurity and the way humans think when it comes to phishing emails and taking risks and so forth. But your system one thinking is constantly scanning, looking around your environment and relying on certain things. It's fast, but it's a little error prone, but it's working automatically, versus your system two thinking, where it's used for handling problems, if needed. But it takes effort to go through and solve certain things, whether you're decision making, but you've got to actually put thought and effort into it. It is very slow, but it is reliable. So if I were to say, what's 2 plus 2, you know it's 4. We know that's 4. We can say it right away. There's no hesitation. System one thinking. Now, if I were to say, what's 5,327 divided by 86, solve for X. Okay, now you're going to have to do a little math. Sorry, I forgot to disclaimer this presentation with that there would be math, but you're solving for X. You can sit down and actually go through and calculate that, because we've been educated and we've been made aware, and we just need to take the time and effort to calculate it. Or we just pull out our phone and open up the calculator app and enter the number in, which, by the way, the answer is 61.942, in case you were wondering. But that's an example of that system two thinking, of going through and meticulously solving an issue. Part of that system two thinking also can involve what we call the OODA loop, which it's not this and it's not this, but there's the Star Wars bit. No, OODA is a model for decision making, and it was created by a Air Force colonel who is a pilot relating to dogfighting skills. And the OODA loop deals with observe, orient, decide, and act. The observe capability of going through and seeing the environment, applying what norms and cultures and situations that you're in, orienting yourselves, coming up with an analysis of what the situation is, making a decision based on that analysis, and then acting upon it. Now, that's a loop. Now, you may go through observe, orient, something changes, and you're back to observe again. You may get to decide, ready to act, and something comes in and changes it again. So that whole OODA loop that you're going through, that thought process, the idea here is for Colonel John Boyd was to get inside the adversary's head and disrupt that. And essentially, that's what we're dealing with. Spies, magicians, pickpockets, con artists, cyber criminals, politicians. They will use these kind of techniques to bypass that OODA loop. They want to break those critical steps and basically have you go from observe to act immediately right away. They want to hijack that and make you take that knee-jerk response, bypass those 3 steps, and take an action. And so when we're dealing with social engineering, we're dealing with the whole concept of, are you being manipulated? Your emotions are in play, whether it's with greed, it's involving money, losing money, gaining money, curiosity, where you could get a spreadsheet that would list the salaries of the top executives in your company. There are people that would be curious to know who makes what, whether they believe it or not, but that knee-jerk response. Self-interest, urgency. You have to open up this document in a certain amount of time. You've got to respond. They're going to give you some sort of time frame where you have to do it. There's a fear factor in there as well, sometimes with some emails where it may involve the government. A lot of the times we've seen those emails coming from the government that stating that your social security number is going to be canceled because you haven't paid your taxes, and we're sending the FBI to your house to arrest you. The government will never do that. But people that don't have that awareness or understanding, or can go through that process to research and research it and figure that out, they'll have that fear and click on the link. And then again, there's also helpfulness as well. So a lot of these all come together to try and socially engineer people, bypass that OODA loop, and get them to click on a link. There's app developers out there that try to socially engineer you as well. They'll trick you into tapping on a ad or on some sort of image that's on a web page. If you're looking at your screen on that pink part there, I think there's a little bit of dust. If you were on an app, they actually put the dust speck inside the picture. So you would have to go, oh, there's dust on my phone, because that always happens, right? So you would swipe that and boom, click the link and off you go. Or this other picture here where is that a hair on that shoe? Well, let me move that. And you end up swiping and you end up clicking the ad and launching you into visiting that website and, downloading adware or whatever the case may be. But these are the kind of social engineering tricks that we see in apps, and along with those kind of emotions as well. This is, depending on your personality, it's like there's a strand of hair on my screen. I need to clean it off. And so that ends up happening. So that leads us into phishing. Phishing essentially is that social engineering of using emails, where the cyber criminals are going to get you to bypass that OODA loop and go right to the intended action. Unfortunately, phishing works because there are still people that click on links and fall for these type of social engineering scams through email. They're relying on the site. It still works because people still do it. And it's still the number one threat action that we see from the Verizon data breach report. So it's still ongoing. Coalfire, a pen testing security consulting company, did a recent study, and their report came out and said 61% of phishing engagement results in a full compromise, that the cyber criminals are able to gain access into your network and your system environment. 91% of all cyber and espionage begins with phishing, and 95% of all security incidents involve human error. Now, that's human error. That's not clicking on links. That could be data uploaded to a cloud server and not secured properly. It could be having a server exposed onto the internet. It could be an unconfigured or unpatched server that sits on the internet that the cyber criminals can find and gain access to. Or it can be phishing. So let's look real briefly. How are the bad guys attacking? They're going through on the internet and doing a deep search for an organization's email addresses of people that work there. There are a variety of different tools out there that they can use, and they're able to go through and discover all those email addresses, and in turn have all those email addresses, then create the phishing email and end up sending it on to the organization. And all they need is one person to click on that link. Think about it this way. If you have your home, and at home in your neighborhood, you hear about burglars are breaking into people's homes. They're coming up, they're ringing a doorbell, nobody answers. They go around back, they break in the window, steal electronics, and get away. If you were to hear about that, that's how the cyber criminals were doing it, you would most likely take certain steps or actions to protect your home. You might install some motion sensing lights. You might install some video cameras, real ones, fake ones. You might even install that alarm system and have it turned on and have it monitored. Eventually, you might even just get down to the point where it's just a sign in your front window that says, "Beware of dog." And on your doorbell, you have one of those fancy doorbells that can play sounds. When you ring the doorbell, it plays the sound of barking dogs. Granted, you may just be an owner of 3 cats at home, but the barking dogs are going to deter those burglars from trying to break in. But if they do go around back and you've got the cameras and you've got the security system, the minute they break that glass, they're all going to go running. At least that's what you hope you do. With regards to phishing attacks, you could have all the technology in the world, all the security, but if somebody clicks on that phishing link or a link that's got malicious activity behind it, that's in essence of opening up the front door and allowing the bad guys in, but you're not seeing the bad guys come in. So that's why it's real important when it comes to these phishing exercises and actual phishing tests that go on, that people are aware of the fact that they are in essence opening up the door. Now there's different kinds of phishing or ishings that go on, different type of attack vectors that the cyber criminals are going to do. The first one, spear phishing. I gave the example where they may go through and look for all the email addresses for the company and then send a very specific email for that company. Let's say, for example, a new chief financial officer has started working at the company. The cyber criminals see that. They craft an email that appears to come from the CFO that says, "Hey, I'm real excited to be a part of this company. Anybody that completes the survey in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to give a $100 bonus." Greed, curiosity, and urgency. That kind of phishing email, if gotten through and people believed it, you're going to have people clicking on that link. Smishing or SMS ishing, that's the text messaging that goes on with regards to phishing attacks, where they'll send you a SMS or an iMessage or a text message to your phone that will have you need to take action. For me, these are a little less believable, mainly because it's harder to show that they're actually from Apple or Walmart or whatever the store is, because it's just a text message. But people still do fall for this, mainly because greed is involved, urgency, and so forth. But SMS phishing is another one. The third one, vishing, there's two aspects to this. One is the voicemail phishing. The other one is automated leaving messages. But this is how the Twitter hack worked, was because they went through, found out people that worked at Twitter through LinkedIn, found their phone numbers, called them up, convinced them that they were working either for the help desk or whoever it was, got them to open up a link, and lo and behold, the cyber criminals were able to gain access in using that. Attackers are going to do anything to bypass that OODA loop, that critical thinking. Here's an example where they spoofed a campus-wide security email address, sent it out to students and staff, talking about a security alert. And in the education environment nowadays, when you're talking incidents, a lot of people get freaked out over active shooter. And again, it's that fear. They're clicking that link, and in this case, providing credentials and giving the credentials to the cyber criminals, and they're able to take it and use that to now log in as that person, and start their campaign, so to speak. Some of the top clicked phishing social media: LinkedIn, you got Twitter, you got Facebook. Personally, my work email address is not tied to any of my social media. A work account should not be tied to, in my opinion, shouldn't be tied to any of your personal social media accounts, unless it's a work social media account. But 47% of the people clicked on the link when it had to do with LinkedIn. Top general email subjects: payroll deduction, password check, COVID. So there's a curiosity, there's a fear, there's an urgency, there's money. Money is always a big thing. A lot of the time we see spoofs going on with Microsoft, like it's coming from Microsoft, UPS, deliveries. Amazon's a big one, because everybody shops at Amazon. Well, almost everybody, I guess, but a lot of people shop at Amazon and end up falling for those. Another thing with phishing, a lot of people end up clicking on that link within the first hour. My thinking is they're doing that system 2 thinking, they're going along, and then all of a sudden, ding, you get an email, and lo and behold, you switch into your system 1 thinking, your autopilot, you're trying to see the email, Pavlovian response because you got an email and checking it out, and lo and behold, you end up falling for a phishing email. Up to 17 hours, I look at that and go, that's people that have been working all day. They've been in meetings and they're tired and they're trying to clear out their inbox, and they're going through on autopilot, zipping through, trying to get it out, get that inbox empty so they can go home or shut down for the night, and they end up falling for it. Out of this, a lot of the phishing attacks comes ransomware, and we've seen an elevated spike with ransomware, mainly because the cyber criminals are gaining access into these systems now, and they're now stealing the data and asking people to pay for the decryption key as well as to delete the data. So ransomware is elevated. It's even more expensive. The cyber criminals are increasing their rates for you to be able to get your data back. I have this available as a PDF. If you'd like a copy, I can send it to you. But these are the social engineering red flags with regards to email, things to look for. There's 22 of them. Do you have to do every 22 every single time? No, but you're going to want to know a handful of these to be checking on a regular basis. When you've got the links, you want to make sure you're checking the links dealing with those rogue URLs. Bank of America, it's not an M, it's an R and an N combined, so that it makes it look like it's an M. Again, this is a PDF. I'd be more than happy to send it to you. So in the last couple of minutes, I want to talk about the security awareness. I mentioned that people are a part of your critical layer. They are your strongest asset. You want to make sure that they're being trained, assessed with phishing assessments, and then reviewing those results and working with the people that need it. We found that basically 40% of people will click on a link, a phishing email, if they haven't had any training. After 90 days, that drops down to about 15%. And after about a year, we're down to less than 5%. So you're going from almost 1 in every 2.5, 1 in every 3 people to almost 1 in 20 people that might be clicking on that link. And again, there's kind of a nice little fun chart. But basically, when it comes to doing phishing assessments, whether KnowBe4 or somebody else, doing it effectively and frequently, you're going to drop that down overall. Because what ends up happening is your security awareness program, and you could have the best security awareness program out there, but the secure behavior is what needs to kick in, and you have that gap. And essentially, there's 3 realities to security awareness. Just because people care, they're aware, doesn't mean they care. So you're going to educate them, and if it's a PowerPoint or a computer-based training where all they do is next, if there's no engagement, there's no involvement with them, they're just not going to care about it. It'll be just another training program they got to do that's keeping them from their actual work. If you try to work against them by forcing it, making them do it all the time, you're going to end up failing. Shadow IT groups are another thing. But basically trying to work with the human aspect of it is important. And then what your employees do is a lot more than what they know. If you can see that they're not falling for those phishing tests, if they're preventing people from tailgating into buildings, they're using strong passwords or password vaults, that goes a long way. Finally, sometimes a nudge is all it takes. So real quick, fun story. The urinal that's there on the left, and I do apologize to the ladies, but this story is rather interesting for the men. There was a custodian in Germany working at a school, and every night he would go and clean the boys' bathroom. And for whatever reason, underneath the urinals, it was always a mess. So he painted these little flies inside of them. And lo and behold, he goes back the next day, and the floor isn't as messy. He gave them that little nudge so that they would aim at something in the toilet bowl and not get it all over the place. Free fruit. Instead of cookies for kids, you give them a free fruit. You give them the measuring stick. So they come in, they get their apple or their banana. They can measure how tall they are. So every time they come into the store, they want to measure themselves, getting them to eat healthy. Telling your kids, you got to eat healthy. But this way you put it out there, it makes it easier. It's kind of like passwords. You have that nudge with the password where you've got the little red, yellow, and green bar. The longer their password, the more secure, the quicker that goes green, and woohoo, they're happy. And it's that nudge, and it makes security happy because they're using strong passwords. You want to plan like a marketer, test like an attacker. So you're going to do different models for training modules for different folks within your organization, whether it's the video, whether it's a management message, town halls. You're going to put out newsletters. You're going to have different signage all around there, along with doing phishing assessments, and you spread that out. You basically have yourself a whole calendar for the year of how you're going to do things and how you're going to work with everybody over time. Work with your marketing folks or communication team. They really know how to get that out of there. So always check your links. Remember System 2 thinking when it comes to emails. Take the time to think. That's why that stop, think, connect is in there. A little nudge goes a long way. Trust, but verify when it comes to your emails. And remember, think like a hacker, plan like a marketer to make your security awareness program successful. Woo! Got a minute left. So if you have questions, I'll have a look at the chat. There's my contact information. So if you want to email me for the slide deck, for the PDFs, drop me an email, jmcquigan@knowbe4.com. And I see a couple of folks would like it. I also do have in the deck, I've got links to different resources that we have available. Thanks, everybody, for your attention.